All right, let's try to wrap up this. The seventh chapter of Mary Poppins comes back. Turns out this whole show in the sky has been put on for Mary Poppins by the evening out. They've got to get her home by 10:30 though, and so we continue. Come dance with us, Jane and Michael, cried the twins, and Jane forgot her question as the four of them swung out into the ring in time with the heavenly tune. But they were hardly halfway round the ring before, with a little start, she stumbled and stood still. Look! Look! She is dancing with him! Michael followed her gaze and stood still on his short, fat legs, staring. Mary Poppins and the sun were dancing together, but not as Jane and he were dancing with the twins, breast to breast and foot to foot. Mary Poppins and the sun never once touched, but waltzed with arms outstretched opposite each other, keeping perfect time together in spite of the space between them. About them wheeled the dancing constellations, Venus with her arms round the neck of Pegasus, the bull and the lion arm in arm, and the three kids prancing in a row. Their moving brightness dazzled the children's eyes as they stood in the stardust gazing. Then suddenly the dance slackened and the music died away. The sun and Mary Poppins together, yet apart, stood still. And at the same time every animal paused in the dance and stood quietly in its tracks. The whole ring was silent. The sun spoke. Now, he said quietly, the time has come. Back to your places in the sky, my stars and constellations. Home to sleep, my three dear mortal guests. Mary Poppins, good night. I do not say goodbye, for we shall meet again, but for a little time, farewell, farewell. Then, with a large and gracious movement of his head, the sun leaned across the space that separated him and Mary Poppins, and with great ceremony, carefully, lightly, swiftly, he brushed her cheek with his lips. Ah! Cried the constellations enviously. The kiss, the kiss. But as she received it, Mary Poppins' hand flew to her cheek protectively, as though the kiss had burnt it. A look of pain crossed her face for a moment. Then, with a smile, she lifted her head to the sun. Farewell, she said softly, in a voice Jane and Michael had never heard her use. Away! Cried the sun, stretching out his whip, and obediently the constellations began to rush from the ring. Castor and Pollux joined arms protectively about the children, that the great bear might not brush them as he lumbered by, nor the bull's horns graze them, nor the lion do them harm. But in Jane's ears and Michael's the sounds of the ring were growing fainter. Their heads fell sideways, dropping heavily upon their shoulders. Other arms came round them, and as in a dream, they heard the voice of Venus saying, Give them to me. I am the homeward star. I shall bring the lamb to the fold and the child to its mother. They gave themselves up to her rocking arm, swinging lightly with her as a boat swings with the tide. To and fro, to and fro. A light flickered across their eyes. Was that the dragon going brightly by, or the nursery candle held guttering above them? To and fro, to and fro. They nestled down into soft, sweet warmth. Was it the lapping heat of the sun, or the eiderdown on a nursery bed? I think it is the sun, thought Jane dreamily. I think it is my eiderdown, thought Michael. And a far-away voice, like a dream, like a breath, cried faintly, faintly, It is whatever you think it is. Farewell, farewell. Michael woke with a start, and he suddenly remembered something. My overcoat! My overcoat! I left it under the royal box! He opened his eyes. He saw the painted duck at the end of his bed. He saw the mantelpiece with the clock, and the Royal Dalton bowl and the jam jar full of green leaves. And he saw, hanging on its usual hook, his overcoat with his hat just above it. But where are the stars? He called, sitting up in bed and staring. I want the stars and constellations. Oh, indeed, said Mary Poppins, coming into the room and looking very stiff and starched in her clean apron. Is that all? I wonder you don't ask for the moon, too. But I did, he reminded her reproachfully, and I got it, too. I squeezed it too tight, and it burst. Burst? Well, burst then. Well, burst then. Stuff, said Mary Poppins, tossing him his dressing gown. Is it morning already? Said Jane, opening her eyes and gazing round the room, very surprised to find herself in her own bed. How did we get back? I was dancing with the twin stars, Castor and Pollux. You two and your stars, said Mary Poppins crossly, pulling back the blankets. I'll star you. Spit Spot out of bed, please. I'm late already. I suppose you danced too all night long? I suppose you danced too long last night, said Michael, bundling unwillingly out onto the floor. Danced? Humph! A lot of dancing I get a chance for, don't I, looking after the 5 worst children in the world? Mary Poppins sniffed and looked very sorry for herself, as if she had not had enough sleep. But weren't you dancing on your evening out? Said Jane, for she was remembering how Mary Poppins and the sun had waltzed together in the center of the stardust ring. Mary Poppins opened her eyes wide. I hope, she remarked, drawing herself up haughtily, I have something better to do with my evening out than to go round and round like a careening whirligig. But I saw you, said Jane, up in the sky. You jumped down from the royal box and went to dance in the ring. Excuse me. Holding their breath, she and Michael gazed at Mary Poppins as her face slowly flushed red with fury. You, she said shortly, have been having a nice sort of nightmare, I must say. Who ever heard of me, a person in my position, jumping down from... But I had the nightmare too, interrupted Michael, and it was lovely. I was in the sky with Jane, and I saw you. What, jumping? Yes, and dancing. In the sky? He trembled as she came toward him. Her face was dark and terrible. One more insult, she said threateningly. Just one more, and you'll find yourself dancing in the corner, so I warn you. He hurriedly looked the other way, tying the cord of his dressing gown, and Mary Poppins, her very apron crackling with anger, flounced across the room to wake up the twins. Jane sat on her bed, staring at Mary Poppins as she bent over the cots. Michael slowly put on his slippers and sighed. We must have dreamt it all, he said sadly. I wish it had been true. It was true, said Jane in a cautious whisper, her eyes still fixed on Mary Poppins. How do you know? Are you sure? Quite sure. Look. Mary Poppins' head was bent over Barbara's cot. Jane looked toward it. Look at her face, she whispered in his ear. Michael regarded Mary Poppins' face steadily. There was the black hair looped back behind the ears, there the familiar blue eyes like a Dutch doll's, and there were the turned-up nose and bright red shiny cheeks. I can't see anything, he began, and broke off suddenly, for now, as Mary Poppins turned her head, he saw what Jane had seen. Burning bright at the very center of her cheek was a small, fiery mark, and looking closer, Michael saw that it was curiously shaped. It was round with curly flame-shaped edges, and like a very small sun. You see? Said Jane softly. That's where he kissed her. Michael nodded, once, twice, 3 times. Yes, he said, standing very still and staring at Mary Poppins. I do see. I do. And that is the end of Chapter 7.